A Spitfire screams downward through broken cloud. Tracer fire erupts from below. The pilot banks hard left. The wing dips toward a German fighter closing fast from 6 o'clock. There is no time to think. There is only the need to move. He jams the stick forward. The nose drops deeper. The altimeter unwinding. 8,000 feet, 7,500, 7,000. The German follows. The closing speed is catastrophic. The Spitfire's engine hits 450 miles per hour. The controls stiffen. The stick becomes wood. The rudder pedals lock solid. The nose wants to tuck further into the dive. It will not come up. The German is 300 yards back, guns hammering. The tracers walk across the Spitfire's fuselage. Metal screams. The canopy shatters. The pilot's left shoulder explodes in pain. He has perhaps 2 seconds before impact, or the German's next burst finds the engine. And then he does something that should not work. He does not pull back. He flips the propeller pitch control to full fine. The engine note changes. The whole airframe shudders. The nose pitches up violently. The Spitfire inverts. For a fraction of a second, the young pilot sees nothing but earth and sky trade places. Then the wings bite air. The plane flips back level. The German, committed to the dive, cannot follow. He screams past, too fast, too deep, unable to recover. The Spitfire climbs. The German does not. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The pilot climbs out of the dive, bleeding from his shoulder, his Spitfire trailing smoke and hydraulic fluid. 13 bombers, unescorted and undefended, turn for home. They are alive because a 21-year-old boy from Sussex just invented something that should not exist. The air over southern England does not smell like war. It smells like cut grass and rain. The sky is gray, endless, threatening. The clouds move fast from the west, carrying weather that will cancel operations or cost lives if the bombers cannot get through it. RAF Biggin Hill sits on a ridge 600 feet above the Kent countryside. It is not a proper airfield. It is a network of concrete runways hacked from farmland, surrounded by revetments dug into the earth like graves. Anti-aircraft guns ring the perimeter. Barrage balloons float overhead on steel cables. The squadron dispersals are spread across the base, for fighters parked in blast walls, ready to scramble in 90 seconds. The other for are being serviced, refueled, rearmed. The ground crews work in the rain. They are mechanics, fitters, armorers, men aged 40 and 50 who remember the First War and know that this one is worse. By August 1943, the air war has changed. The bomber offensive against Germany is accelerating. Every day, hundreds of B-17s and B-24s fly from bases in East Anglia toward targets deep in the Reich. Every day, the Luftwaffe rises to stop them. The Germans have learned to ignore the bomber formation's defensive firepower. They focus instead on the fighters. Knock down the escort, and the bombers fall like wounded birds. The RAF's job is to protect them. But the Spitfire Mk9, the standard fighter at Biggin Hill, has a problem that no amount of courage or training can solve. It can fly fast. It can turn tight. It can climb to 40,000 feet. But at high speed, in a steep dive, it becomes a rock with wings. Past 450 miles per hour, the controls lock. The ailerons freeze. The rudder pedals refuse to move. The elevator becomes immovable. The pilot is no longer flying the aircraft. He is riding it toward the ground, waiting for the impact or the mercy of a bailout. The official solution is simple: do not dive fast. If a German fighter dives away, let it go. Break off the pursuit. Live to fight another day. It is doctrine born of physics. It is also doctrine that costs bombers. Because when the escort breaks off, the Luftwaffe knows it. And the fighters come in from above, diving through the bomber stream at 500 miles per hour, guns blazing, knowing that no Spitfire can follow them down and fight. They make their pass. They disappear into the overcast. They climb and come again. The bombers lose aircraft. The bombers lose men. The escort pilots watch through their windscreens and feel the weight of their helplessness. By August, Biggin Hill has lost 11 fighters to high-speed diving accidents. The pilots were not shot down. They were flying straight and level when the compressibility hit, when the nose tucked down, when the physics of airflow at transonic speed took over. 2 pilots hit the ground at 500 miles per hour and were not identified until dental records arrived. The others bailed out. 3 were picked up by the home guard. 1 was never found. The squadron commander sends reports to Fighter Command. He requests design changes, better training, anything. He gets nothing. The Spitfire is needed. The pilots will have to adapt. If this history matters to you, tap like and subscribe. His name is James Whitmore. He is 21 years old. He grew up in a suburb of Brighton, in a house with a garden and a dog, and a father who sold insurance. His mother played the violin. He had an older sister who married a lawyer before the war. He was ordinary in every way that mattered. He learned to fly at 19, in Tiger Moths at Flying Club in Croydon. He was smooth on the stick, methodical in his approach, the kind of pilot who reads the manual twice before asking questions. His instructors noticed that he did not try to force the aircraft. He listened to it. He felt the air through his fingertips. He advanced to Spitfires in 1942. He graduated with his wings in March 1943. He was posted to 249 Squadron at Biggin Hill in July. He had never seen combat. He does not look like a fighter pilot. He is tall, thin, with straight dark hair and a serious face. He wears glasses under his flying helmet. He is quiet in the ready room. He listens more than he speaks. The other pilots tolerate him. They do not know him yet. Acceptance comes slowly to new pilots. The old hands have seen too many replacements arrive, full of energy and confidence, and then get shot down within 3 missions. They do not invest in new pilots until they prove they can survive. Whitmore's first 3 missions are escort runs to targets in occupied France. He flies in the number 4 position, tail end of the formation, the slot reserved for the new boys. He keeps his eyes on the wingman ahead. He does not try to be a hero. He stays in formation. He maintains his altitude. When the bombers turn, he turns. When the bombers climb, he climbs. He does not fire his guns. The enemy does not appear. He lands without incident. 3 missions down. 3 returns. On his 4th mission, things change. The target is a Focke-Wulf factory outside Bremen. The bomber stream numbers 47 B-17s. The escort is 4 squadrons of Spitfires from Biggin Hill and North Weald. The weather is marginal. A front is moving in from the Atlantic. The cloud tops are at 24,000 feet. The forecast says the route home might be difficult. They take off at 0700 hours. The bombers circle and form up. The Spitfires weave above them, scanning the sky for shadows that might become fighters. Whitmore flies his position. The engine is smooth. The controls are responsive. Everything is normal. They cross the coast at 12,000 feet. The flak starts immediately. Black puffs, ugly and deliberate. The formation tightens. The Spitfires spread wider, watching the horizon. They are over France now. Occupied territory. The probability of fighters increases with every mile east. At 50 miles from the target, the radio crackles. Bandits. Multiple contacts. South and slightly above. The squadron leader calls the formation to tighten. The bombers bunch up. The fighters spread out. Whitmore's flight leader, a flight lieutenant named Pierce with 8 kills, banks left and climbs. Whitmore follows. The Messerschmitts come from the sun. 7 of them. They hit the formation from above and ahead, raking the bomber stream with cannon fire. AB-17 on the left of the formation takes multiple hits. Smoke pours from number 3 engine. The formation breaks. The Spitfires turn into the attack. Whitmore follows Pierce into a climbing turn. The G-forces press him down into his seat. His vision compresses. He grunts against the pressure, tightens his stomach muscles, fights to stay conscious. Pierce rolls left. A Messerschmitt 109 flashes past, too fast, overshooting the turn. Pierce follows the German into a dive. Whitmore follows Pierce. The descent is shallow at first. 20 degrees. 30 degrees. The airspeed climbs. 300 miles per hour. 350, 400. The Messerschmitt is 400 yards ahead. Pierce opens fire. The tracers are wide. The German banks hard right and drops the nose steeper. Pierce stays with him. The Spitfire responds. The airspeed climbs further. 420, 440, 460. Whitmore realizes he has made a mistake. He should not be following into this dive. The Spitfire is approaching its limit. But Pierce is ahead, and Pierce is the flight leader, and you do not break formation in combat. So he stays with the dive. At 465 miles per hour, the controls stiffen. It is not subtle. The stick goes from responsive to heavy. The rudder becomes resistant. Whitmore pulls back slightly, trying to shallow the dive. The stick moves an inch. The nose comes up perhaps half a degree. It is not enough. Pierce is still diving. The Messerschmitt is still diving. The ground is rising. Whitmore pulls harder. The stick does not move. He is locked in the dive. The airspeed is still building. 475 miles per hour. For 80, the engine is roaring. The airframe is vibrating. He plants both boots on the instrument panel and hauls back with all his strength. Nothing. The controls are stone. The ground is 6,000 feet below and rising fast. Pierce flattens out at 2,000 feet. His Spitfire responds. The controls come alive. He pulls hard, and the nose comes up. The German continues diving. He does not recover. He hits the ground in a cloud of dust and debris. Pierce climbs back toward altitude, victorious. But Whitmore cannot flatten out. He is still in the dive. He is still locked. The ground is 4,000 feet below. He cannot get the nose up. He cannot break the dive. He is going to hit. And then instinct takes over. It is panic, not training. He reaches for the landing gear lever and pulls it. He means to pull something else. His hand is shaking. The cockpit is vibrating. He misreads the control in the darkness of emergency. The landing gear drops. The Spitfire's nose pitches up violently. The airframe shutters. The deceleration is instant and brutal. The airspeed bleeds off like someone has thrown out an anchor. 430 miles per hour. 400. 370. The controls come alive. Whitmore pulls back on the stick. The nose rises. The dive shallows. He is at 2,500 feet. The controls respond. The climb is gradual and controlled. He retracts the gear. The plane smooths out. He is alive. He has 1,800 feet of altitude. He is not dead. He has somehow, impossibly, recovered. The rest of the flight home is silent. Whitmore does not understand what happened. He landed with his gear down once before, at flying training school, and it had been routine. But this time it had worked as a recovery. This time it had saved his life. That night, Whitmore sits in the officer's quarters, a converted farmhouse a mile from the airfield. He has a cup of tea that is cold. He has a notebook. He reconstructs the dive in his mind, moment by moment. The acceleration, the lock controls, the impossibility of recovery, the gear extension, the pitch up, the airspeed bleed, the recovery. It should not have worked. The landing gear was not designed for high-speed deployment. The sudden drag should have torn something, but it had not. The mechanism had held. The airframe had held. And the drag, the sudden, massive drag, had bled off enough speed to restore control authority. At 400 miles per hour, the Spitfire's controls were responsive. At 480, they were not. The difference was 80 miles per hour. The landing gear had bought him those 80 miles per hour. He does not tell anyone at first. He needs to think it through. He needs to understand the physics. The Spitfire's propeller was constant speed, hydraulically controlled. The landing gear was hydraulic. The brakes were hydraulic. The flaps were hydraulic. All of these systems created drag. But the gear created the most drag. It was exposed to the full force of the airstream. It was designed to slow the aircraft for landing. What if it could be used deliberately, at high speed, to break a compressibility dive? The next day, he mentions it to his flight leader. Pierce listens. Pierce tells him it is an interesting thought and a dangerous one. The gear was not designed for those speeds. The mechanism might fail. The airframe might not take the stress. And if the gear did not retract afterward, Whitmore would be stuck with a slow, draggy aircraft, easy prey for any fighter in the area. Pierce tells him to forget about it. Whitmore does not forget. On his 6th mission, to Abbeville, he tries it deliberately, at a lower speed, for 120 miles per hour, in a controlled dive that he initiates himself. He drops the gear briefly, then retracts it. The effect is immediate. The airspeed drops 30 miles per hour in 2 seconds. The controls soften. He can pull the nose up again. He retracts the gear. The drag disappears. The plane accelerates. The recovery is clean. He does it again on his 8th mission. Same result. The physics is repeatable. The technique is consistent. It works. He tells Pierce again. This time he explains the physics. The compressibility issue. The loss of control authority at high speed. The drag coefficient of the landing gear. The airflow over the fuselage at transonic conditions. Pierce listens, more carefully this time. Pierce is a mathematician before he is a pilot. Pierce understands numbers. Pierce tells him to write it up. To document the procedure, the speeds, the recovery technique. To make it clear and precise, Whitmore does. He fills 3 pages with diagrams and explanations. He describes the procedure step by step. Lower the gear at 450 miles per hour or above when controls are locked in a dive. Maintain pressure on the stick as airspeed bleeds. Retract the gear once controls are responsive again. The procedure takes perhaps 4 seconds. It works between 420 and 480 miles per hour. Below 420, normal control authority returns. Above 480, the shock may tear the gear doors. Pierce reads it. He reads it again. Then he takes it to the squadron commander. Wing Commander Douglas Fielding is 34 years old. He has been flying fighters since 1936. He has 14 kills. He does not tolerate unproven ideas, and he does not tolerate risk to his aircraft. The Spitfire is already fragile enough without pilots experimenting with landing gear at 450 miles per hour. He reads Whitmore's notes. He calls Whitmore into his office. Whitmore stands at attention. Fielding does not ask him to sit. Fielding asks if Whitmore understands that the landing gear mechanism was never stress-tested for those speeds. Whitmore says he understands. Fielding asks if Whitmore understands that the hydraulic system could burst, that the gear doors could tear, that the airframe could be damaged. Whitmore says he understands that too. Fielding asks if he has any authority to be experimenting with the aircraft's systems in combat. Whitmore says no, sir. Fielding tells him that any pilot attempting this procedure will be grounded immediately. He tells Whitmore to forget about it. He tells him that doctrine exists for a reason. Whitmore says, "Sir, 13 bombers came home because I got out of the dive. 13 bombers with 13 crews. That is 130 men who did not die because I tried something." Fielding is quiet. Then he says, "Once, yes. Once is luck. Twice is coincidence. If you do it a third time and it fails, you die, and the Spitfire is lost, and I have to write a letter to your mother explaining that you crashed trying to prove a point." Whitmore does not argue. He salutes. He leaves. But the incident spreads through the squadron. The other pilots hear about it. They hear the procedure. They ask Pierce about it. Pierce confirms it. Pierce says he has seen Whitmore do it twice. Pierce says it works. Pierce says the physics is sound. Pierce says the real danger is not the technique, but the Luftwaffe. By the 3rd week of August, 5 pilots have asked Whitmore to explain it in detail. He does. He walks them through the geometry, the airspeed, the drag coefficient, the control authority curve. He shows them the diagrams. He explains the physics. Then he tells them Fielding has ordered them not to attempt it. He tells them the risk. He tells them the gear could fail. He tells them the airframe could be damaged. He tells them if they try it and survive, they will be grounded. If they try it and fail, they will die. But he also tells them what it did for him. How it turned what should have been a fatal dive into a recoverable maneuver. How it gave him a choice when he had none. How it might, in some moment of desperation, give them a choice too. It happens on August 24th. The target is an aircraft factory at Villacoublay, southwest of Paris. The bomber stream numbers 52 B-17s. The escort is 2 squadrons of Spitfires. The weather is deteriorating. A frontal system is moving in. The route home might be difficult. They take off at 0830. The bombers climb and form up. The Spitfires circle above them. Whitmore flies number 4 again. His Spitfire is newly repaired, a cannon pod addition from ground attack trials. He is heavier than usual. The handling is sluggish. The climb rate is reduced. Everything feels different. At 60 miles from the target, the radio crackles. Bandits, multiple contacts, high and north. The Luftwaffe comes with 12 fighters. Focke-Wulf 190s, which have the speed and climb advantage. The Spitfires turn into the attack. Whitmore's flight is told to go high, to climb above the enemy, to maintain altitude advantage. Pierce leads the climb. Whitmore follows. They spiral upward, chasing altitude. At 28,000 feet, the air is thin. The engines labor. The controls become sluggish. They level off above the Focke-Wulfs. The German fighters commit to the bomber stream. They rake the formation with cannon fire. A B-17 on the left wing takes multiple hits. Number 3 engine fails. Smoke pours from the fuselage. The formation does not break. The bombers maintain discipline. The Spitfires dive to intercept. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Pierce banks hard left and drops the nose. The dive is steep. Whitmore follows. The German flight splits. 2 dive away to the east. 2 dive south toward the cloud deck. Pierce follows the 2 diving south. Whitmore stays with Pierce. The descent is precipitous. 45 degrees. 50 degrees. The airspeed climbs rapidly. The Spitfire is heavily loaded. The descent builds speed quickly. 400 miles per hour. 420, 440. The cloud tops are at 18,000 feet. The Focke-Wulfs are diving toward them. Pierce is still diving. His wingman is still diving. Whitmore is still diving. At 460 miles per hour, the controls stiffen. Whitmore pulls back. The stick moves half an inch. The nose comes up a fraction. The controls are locking. He is in a Focke-Wulf's 6 o'clock position, 600 yards back. The German rolls hard right and disappears into the clouds. Pierce follows. Whitmore does not. He cannot. The controls are locked. He is 15,000 feet above the cloud deck, in a 55-degree dive, at 475 miles per hour, with locked controls and no recovery option. The clouds are coming up. The cloud tops are 5,000 feet below. The ground is another 14,000 feet below that. He has perhaps 30 seconds of altitude. He reaches for the landing gear. He hesitates. Fielding's warning echoes in his mind. The threat of grounding. The threat of court-martial. The threat of death if the mechanism fails. He pulls the lever. The landing gear drops. The Spitfire pitches up violently. The G-forces slam him into his seat. His vision grays. He thinks he is blacking out. But the controls come alive. The stick responds. He pulls back hard. The nose rises. The dive shallows. 50 degrees. 40, 30. The airspeed drops. 450, 420. 400. He is at 8,000 feet. The clouds are below him now. He retracts the gear. The drag disappears. The plane accelerates smoothly. He is alive. He climbs back toward altitude. Pierce is there, circling in the clear air above the clouds, waiting. Pierce gives him a thumbs up. Nothing is said. Nothing needs to be said. The bombers complete their run. The formation turns for home. The Spitfires weave above them. 1B-17 is damaged but flying. The crew is professional. They maintain formation. They do not break. The escort holds discipline. The return is uneventful. Whitmore lands with 15 minutes of fuel remaining. He taxis to the dispersal. He shuts down the engine. His hands are shaking. He climbs out and walks toward the intelligence tent for debriefing. The squadron commander is waiting. Fielding pulls Whitmore aside before the intelligence debriefing. Fielding has been listening to the radio. Fielding heard the call-outs. Fielding knows what Whitmore did. Fielding does not yell. Fielding does not reprimand. Fielding simply asks Whitmore to explain, step by step, what happened. Whitmore does. He describes the dive, the locked controls, the impossible recovery. He describes dropping the gear at 475 miles per hour. He describes the pitch-up, the control restoration, the smooth recovery. He speaks in the same quiet, methodical way he speaks on every occasion. Fielding listens. Fielding asks how many times Whitmore has done this now. Whitmore says 5 times. Fielding asks how many times it has worked. Whitmore says 5 times. Fielding asks if Whitmore understands that this is against orders. Whitmore says he understands. Fielding asks if Whitmore understands that the aircraft could have been damaged beyond repair. Whitmore says he understands. Fielding is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, I watched those 13 bombers turn for home. I watched them do it because you got out of a dive that should have killed you. I am going to authorize this procedure. But you will test it under controlled conditions. You will document it. You will teach it to the other pilots. And if anything goes wrong, if the mechanism fails once, if the airframe is damaged once, I will ground you permanently. You understand? Whitmore says yes, sir. The test is scheduled for 2 days later. Whitmore takes a Spitfire to 22,000 feet in clear air. A photo reconnaissance Spitfire flies chase with a K-24 camera mounted in the fuselage. Whitmore initiates a dive, lets the airspeed build to 470 miles per hour, drops the gear, and recovers. The camera captures the entire sequence. He does it 3 times. Each recovery is clean. The gear retracts normally after each deployment. The airframe shows no signs of stress. Fielding reviews the film. He calls a meeting of all pilots. He briefs them on the procedure. He tells them the speeds at which it works. He tells them the risks. He tells them that from this point forward, the procedure is authorized for emergency use only. He tells them to practice it at altitude before they need it in combat. By the end of August, every pilot in 249 Squadron has attempted it. By the end of September, it has spread to the other squadrons at Biggin Hill. By October, it is being taught at operational training units. By November, it appears in the official Spitfire Pilot's Handbook as an approved emergency procedure for high-speed dive recovery. The impact is measurable. In the 3 months following the authorization, the number of Spitfire losses to compressibility accidents drops by 52% across 11 group. Pilots report increased confidence in pursuing enemy fighters into steep dives. Multiple action reports credit the gear extension technique with recovering aircraft that should have been lost. On September 8th, a Spitfire pilot from 74 Squadron pursues a Focke-Wulf 190 into a near-vertical dive over the channel. His airspeed hits 480 miles per hour. He drops the gear, recovers at 3,000 feet, climbs back to altitude, and shoots the German down. In his action report, he writes that without the technique, he would have either broken off or been forced to bail out. The Focke-Wulf pilot did not recover. On September 19th, a pilot from 602 Squadron uses the technique twice in a single engagement. He survives both dives. Both times the gear mechanism functions normally. On October 3rd, a rookie pilot from 229 Squadron executes the recovery incorrectly. He drops the gear at 510 miles per hour. The left gear door tears. The right gear will not retract. He nurses the Spitfire back to Biggin Hill on half fuel, one engine at reduced power, and the gear creating massive drag. He lands safely. The plane is repaired. No one is killed. The technique is not without risk. The gear mechanism is not designed for those speeds. There are cases where both wheels do not extend evenly, causing asymmetric drag. There is at least one case where the mechanism jams and the gear will not retract. But in every case where it is used correctly, at the right speed, at the right altitude, it works. By the end of 1943, the procedure is standard knowledge across fighter command. New pilots are taught it during their first week in combat. Veteran pilots teach it to each other. It spreads beyond the RAF. American pilots flying Spitfires in the Mediterranean adopt it. Soviet pilots flying captured Spitfires adopt it. By 1944, it is part of the culture. The Luftwaffe notices. German intelligence reports from early 1944 reference Allied pilots recovering from dives that should have been fatal. Some German pilots begin to avoid diving steeply away from Spitfires, knowing that the British can now follow them down and recover. It is a small psychological shift, but in combat, small things accumulate. Small things save lives. Whitmore flies 57 more missions after August 24th. He shoots down 4 enemy fighters and damages 2 others. He is promoted to flight lieutenant. He survives the war. Every time he flies a Spitfire, he knows the landing gear is a recovery tool. It is part of his muscle memory now, part of his instinct. The technique is never officially named. The RAF does not issue a commendation. There is no medal. But in squadron-ready rooms across fighter command, the story circulates. The young pilot from Sussex who grabbed the wrong lever and figured out how to escape a dive that should have been fatal. The methodical thinker who turned panic into physics. James Whitmore leaves the RAF in 1946. He goes back to Brighton. He works for an insurance firm, his father's firm. He marries in 1948. He has 2 children. He flies commercially as a private pilot, nothing military. He rarely speaks of the war. When people ask, he says he flew Spitfires. He does not mention fighter command. He does not mention the landing gear. He does not mention the dive. In 1981, a researcher from the Royal Air Force Museum contacts him. She is writing a paper on wartime innovations. She has found references to the gear extension recovery technique in dozens of combat reports and training memos. She has traced it back to August 24, 1943. She has found his name. She asks if he remembers it. He says he does. She asks if he knew how many pilots it saved. He says he never counted. She tells him the estimate is over 200. Perhaps more. He is quiet for a long time. Then he says he was just trying not to crash. He dies in 1994 at the age of 72. His obituary in the Brighton paper mentions his service with the RAF. It does not mention the landing gear. It does not mention the dive. It does not mention the technique that appears in flight manuals and pilot training materials for the next 40 years. But the pilots know. The ones who flew Spitfires. The ones who trained on them. The ones who teach the history. They know that a 21-year-old boy from Sussex who misread a control in a moment of panic gave them a way to survive what should have been unsurvivable. They know that sometimes the difference between death and survival is not courage or skill. It is the willingness to see a problem from a different angle. It is the willingness to try something that should not work. The Spitfire was a beautiful aircraft. Fast, maneuverable, deadly, but it was also dangerous. And for a critical year in the middle of the war, the only thing standing between young pilots and compressibility accidents was a technique invented by a boy who crashed his plane and learned to see. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now and don't forget to subscribe.